Tomorrow, James Comey will be giving testimony in the Senate Intelligence Committee. And this has been, anticipated in the mainstream media for a long time because James Comey, well, I personally think a lot of the mainstream media is excited about it because they think like James Comey is going to say President Trump obstructed justice. That's basically, to me, the underlying big motivation behind a lot of the mainstream media's excitement. But but also, a lot of mainstream media, they're all going to be covering this. And even last I saw, CBS and one of the other networks, I think maybe NBC, said they're going to cover the testimony live. So it's going to be blanket coverage of this testimony. But what happened is today, James Comey's testimony, the prepared remarks he's going to say, 6 pages of prepared remarks, that actually got leaked, and it went out to the public. And there was some reasoning. I've been doing so much today. I'm trying to remember what the reasoning was. Let me see if I can find it on my Twitter feed. What the reasoning was for leaking it early. Hold on a second. Did I think I did retweet this earlier. So give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find that. Did I retweet it? I should have retweeted it. This is, and look, I'll give him credit. Jake Tapper from CNN, he gave a series of tweets. So Jake Tapper said, FBI Director Comey was released by the Senate committee at Comey's request, and Comey reportedly made that request because it's a complex narrative that he thought required some careful reading before hearing it from him directly. Also, he thought that it would ensure the committee had time to formulate probing and useful questions. So this testimony got released today. Comey's testimony that he's going to be giving tomorrow in the Senate hearing got released today at Comey's request. And Comey said that, he wanted them to have the questions in advance, so the testimony in advance, they could look it over, they could decide what questions to ask. He thought there was some complexity in the narrative. So this is not somebody inside the Senate committee secretly leaking it. Comey himself requested that this be leaked, although I guess they chose to leak it. So it was released by the Senate committee at Comey's request. So we have the testimony he's going to give, and I'm not sure. So he's going to be answering questions tomorrow. So it's not certain that this is all the testimony he'll give. I guess I could see a world in which Comey, gives his testimony, and then they ask him questions, and then new information comes out when they ask him the questions. But I kind of think my gut feeling is that this testimony is probably what he's going to stick to. If he wanted to put more details in, he would have put it in his prepared remarks, because it's 6 pages of prepared remarks. So it's not I don't think he was worried that his prepared remarks were going to be too long if he added more details in there. It seems pretty detailed. So I'm guessing, I might be wrong, I'm guessing that the remarks are pretty much what he's going to stick to tomorrow, and that's what he has to say, and that's all the relevant information he has on the conversations with President Trump are in these prepared remarks. And we're going to go over some of them in a little bit. And just to clarify also, what this document is, and I'll give you a little, I'll show you what the document looks like. So this is the document here, and we're going to be going through it, but it says, a statement for the record, Senate Select Intelligence Committee on Intelligence, James Comey, June 8th, which is tomorrow. And what this document does is it goes through 5 different meetings that James Comey had with President Trump. I believe these are the only 5 meetings. These are all and only the meetings. These are all the meetings and only the only meetings he had with President Trump. And he writes in this document what happened in each of the meetings on his recollection. So we'll quickly go over it, but as you can see, it's January 6th briefing. That's the first one before President Trump got inaugurated. Then the second one is a dinner with him. We'll talk about that. Number 3 is an Oval Office meeting, and that's the one where after the meeting, President Trump asked him to stay after so he could talk to him alone. Then the last 2 are phone calls. March 30th phone call between him and President Trump, and April 11th phone call between him and President Trump. There we go. So there's your 5. That's the end. So this testimony is about 5 meetings, or conversations, I guess you could say, because the phone calls aren't really meetings, that President Trump had with James Comey, and James Comey is going to testify what happened in these meetings. So we're going to talk right now, and I can't. Part of me would like to just read over the whole document, but that would just be endless and long, and I don't think a lot of you want me to do that. So what I'd like to do is kind of point out some of the things that I found noteworthy in this document. And another thing I want to do is I'd love to get your comments and your questions on this. So as we're going along, if you'd like to write in, the information's on your screen. You can reach me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Also, a lot of, well, not a lot of, I don't know about if it's a lot of, but some of what I've been talking about today is stuff I've been posting on Twitter today about this testimony, like all afternoon. So if you want to read any of that, you can follow me on Twitter or just go look at my Twitter at Lookner. Also, you can reach me by emailing me steve.lookner at rsbn.tv. So let's get into this. What should I talk about first? Well, I think the first thing I'll talk about is here's how I'm going to structure my presentation, if you will. I think there are certain points that the media and people on the left especially have been emphasizing about this upcoming testimony, and they've suggested that this testimony is going to make Trump look really bad and be bad for Trump. And I feel like a couple of those big points, when you actually look at the testimony, that's not going to actually happen, and it won't look that bad for President Trump. So to start on this, let's start with this one. When James Comey got fired, President Trump sent out a letter, and the letter said, among other things, James Comey told me on 3 different occasions that I was not under investigation by the FBI. And, you know, for weeks now, if you've been watching the mainstream media, and I do watch it, you've been seeing experts on national TV, mock this and say, oh, when Comey testifies, he's going to show that wasn't true. And there's no way Comey told him 3 times he wasn't under investigation. But one striking thing that struck me when I read through this testimony, again, this is the testimony of James Comey about all of the conversations he had, all 5 conversations he had with President Trump since President Trump got elected. And if you look at the testimony carefully, what happens? You see very clearly that Trump was exactly right, and that 3 different times James Comey told President Trump he was not under a counterintelligence investigation by the FBI. Actually, there's a 4th occasion which you might think implies that he's not under investigation. President Trump could have said even 4, but he said 3, and that was the safe call to me. So let's look for a second, and I want to just go over the 3 different places where James Comey says that to President Trump that he's not under investigation by the FBI for not under a counterintelligence investigation. So the first one, give me 1 second, I want to call it up here, then I can show it to you. I can find the exact spot and show it to you. This happens, okay, let me cue it up here. So let's set the scene here. Oops, let me move me out of the way a little bit. So this is, let me just show you where I am in the document. I'm in the January 6th meeting. By the way, this January 6th briefing, and by the way, this is their first conversation, and this document is readily available online if you go search any of the mainstream media. Just go Google search Comey prepared testimony, read Comey prepared testimony, and you'll be able to find this testimony very easily if you want to follow along, or read it later. So this first meeting, what happens is they have this first meeting. It's an intel meeting with the president-elect to give them like intel updates. And he says, it says in the document, it says, I'll show you. I was there with other intelligence community leaders to brief him and his new national security team on the findings of an intelligence community assessment concerning Russian efforts to interfere with the elections. This is a meeting about the intelligence community's investigation into Russian interference in the election. But he then says, I remained alone with the president after to tell him about something. And what is it that Comey stayed after in the meeting to tell President Trump about alone? So the basic story here is that Comey stayed after because there was this information that they had come across, some kind of information about President Trump, and it wasn't confirmed, it was unconfirmed information, but it was potentially embarrassing to the president. And basically, Comey wanted to let President Trump know about that information and give him a heads up about it. And he explains why in this document. But also, what he says in the document is, we're going to let him know about this information, but then we were a bit concerned that if we let him know that we have this information that's unconfirmed about him, he might worry that we're investigating him, and we don't want him to get the wrong impression. And so after telling him about this information, Comey then told President Trump that he wasn't under a counterintelligence investigation. So what I want now, so that was like the brief summary. So let me just show you some of the details here real quick so you can see this for yourself. Where is it here? So you see what it says, the IC leadership thought it was important for a variety of reasons to alert the president to the existence of this material. Among these reasons were, one, we knew the media, existence of this material, even though it was salacious and unverified. So salacious suggests this was some maybe sexual related material, about maybe it involved, who knows what it involved. I've seen different reports about what it involved. I don't remember. I need to go back and look that up. But it seems like they had some compromising accusations about President Trump, and they were unverified, and they wanted to let President Trump know about it. And then here's the part, though. Here's the clear part where Comey says that he informed the president that he's not under investigation. Here we go. Oops, that's this paragraph right here. So let's read that one. In that context, prior to the January 6th meeting, I discussed with the FBI's leadership team whether I should be prepared to assure President-elect Trump that we were not investigating him personally. That was true. We did not have an open counterintelligence case on him. We agreed I should do so if circumstances warranted. During our one-on-one meeting at Trump Tower, based on President-elect Trump's reaction to the briefing and without him directly asking the question, I offered that assurance. So right there, President Comey says in his own testimony he's going to be giving tomorrow, on January 6th at the first meeting with President Trump, he assured President Trump that President Trump was not being investigated by the FBI in a counterintelligence investigation. Very clear. I'm not working hard to interpret this. It's very clear in the testimony. So that's case one. That's a very clear case where James Comey tells President Trump he's not under investigation. Okay, by the FBI. Let's go to the second one. And the second one, give me a second here. I'll come back to me and while I find it for you. Here it is. So the second event, this is the second meeting they had, was this dinner on January 27th. And here's the paragraph here. So there you can see it right there. Let's read that one. During the dinner, the president returned to the salacious material I had briefed him about on January 6th. And as he had done previously, expressed his disgust for the allegations and strongly denied them. He said he was considering ordering me to investigate the alleged incident to prove it didn't happen. I replied that he should give that careful thought because it might create a narrative that we were investigating him personally, which we weren't. And because it was very difficult to prove a negative. So here we have the second clear time. Again, I'm not doing any big interpretation or anything. It's clearly in the testimony. Second time they met was the second time James Comey told President Trump, we are not investigating you personally. That's 2 times. Now let's look at the third time. Let me find that for you. And this comes at sorry, I just got to find it here. See, I have it cut out. I can always take my screenshot of it, but I'd rather actually find it for you. So let me just do a little word search here and find it. Ah, there we go. I have it right here. Wonderful. So let's go to this. This comes in. It's there, and this is the March 30th phone call, which you'll see in a second. March 30th phone call. Let's go to this paragraph right here. If you look in the middle there, it says, I explained. So about 7 lines down, it says, I explained. And what Comey says is, I explained that we had briefed the leadership of Congress on exactly which individuals we were investigating, and that we had told those congressional leaders that we were not personally investigating President Trump. I reminded him that I had previously told him that. So it says it right there. We were not personally investigating President Trump. I reminded him that I had previously told him that. So there we have 3 clear cases where Comey tells President Trump, we are not investigating you. So President Trump was exactly right. He couldn't have been more accurate in his statement that James Comey told him 3 times that he was not under FBI investigation. And I have to admit, when I saw that statement from President Trump, where President Trump said, Comey told me 3 times I wasn't in investigation, I figured, well, maybe President Trump is speaking loosely, and maybe Comey said it once or twice, or, it's not exactly clear. He meant a few times or something, because, President Trump sometimes has a reputation for being a little loose with his language. But it turns out from James Comey's testimony, President Trump was exactly 100% accurate when he said in his letter in which he explained his firing of Comey that James Comey 3 times told President Trump he is not under investigation. So this is a case where the mainstream media has been, I've seen a number of people in the mainstream media, a number of experts saying, and people on the left saying, when President Trump, when Comey testifies, that's going to blow out of the water President Trump's claim that he was told 3 times by Comey that he's not under investigation. And it turns out that claim was 100% accurate. Okay, so that's that little segment about the how James Comey's testimony confirms President Trump's claim that he was told 3 times by Comey that he's not under investigation. Before moving on, though, I want to take a second. If you guys have any comments or questions, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. I'll check my messages and my questions and my messages in a moment. I also want to just say that we here at Right Side Broadcasting are viewer supported. You support us. We cannot stay on the air without you. We want to provide an alternative to the mainstream media. So, for example, like today, I wanted to come on and just take some time and go through this document and not give you sound bites about the document and actually show you the places in the document where certain things are said. My guess is that if you go on the mainstream media today and you watch this coverage, you're hearing sound bites, but you're not actually seeing analysis of the actual document, deep analysis, and that's what we want to give you here. I got to say this also, and I apologize it took so long to come on the air, but I spent the entire afternoon basically going over this testimony and looking at it and trying to figure out what was going on. It's 6 pages and it's pretty dense. So I know for a fact that without even having watched it, that the mainstream media was covering this all day. And I am sure like minutes after this testimony came out, all these experts were on the mainstream media talking about the testimony and giving their analysis. And to me, unless you really kind of sit with this testimony for a little bit and look through it and look through the details, you're not going to get a great analysis from that. So I wanted to wait a little bit till we came on the air so I could actually read and absorb this thing and give you some thoughts on it. But again, we feel this is an alternative to the mainstream media coverage. We also last night did 4 hours of coverage on the Iran terror attacks. A lot of the mainstream media wasn't covering it at all or very briefly. So we want to give you this alternative to the mainstream media and give you an agenda-free place to get your news and to talk about the news. But we rely on you for support. We can't stay on the air without your support. You are our main source of revenue. And by revenue, I mean those are the funds we use to keep staying on the air. We don't have giant bank accounts here that we're personally putting money into. We're just taking the money you send us and using it to keep ourselves on the air. So if you like our programming and you'd like to see more of it and you'd like us to keep giving you an alternative to the mainstream media, hope you consider donating. If you'd like to donate, there are 3 ways you can do that. The first way is to go to rsbn.tv/donate. rsbn.tv patreon.com/donate. Very easy to do. Second easy way to donate is if you're watching this on YouTube, and I know some of you are on Facebook watching it, but if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a chat room next to the broadcast, and you can go to that chat room and click the $ at the bottom of the chat room. There's a $ at the bottom of the chat room. You can click and donate that way. And if you do that, your name will come up and I'll be able to thank you on the air for your donation. So that's way number 2 to donate. And way number 3 to donate is if you're interested in getting some free stuff from Right Side in exchange for donating. We have like mugs, and we have other free goodies you can get, and pens and all kinds of and different other things special things you can get from us. Go to our Patreon page where you can sign up for a monthly contribution and get cool free stuff from us in return. So our Patreon page is www.patreon.com/RSBN. That's www.patreon.com/RSBN. Patreon is Patreon. And a big thank you to the moderators today, both on the YouTube and on the website, for moderating our chats as usual. Very much appreciated. Special shout out to JC and Webster, who moderated all night last night. We were up from about 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. last night Central Time, covering the Iran terror attack. That video is up on our Right Side YouTube site if you haven't seen it yet and you want to take a look. Okay, so let's now check out, I want to get to some of your messages which you've sent before moving on here. Let's see if there are messages. I haven't checked yet, but I will look. Fern Marie writes in, that 3 times confirmation is great. Okay, what about Comey's statement on General Flynn? Is it obstruction? Is that what Comey is saying? Okay, so I'm going to get to the General Flynn stuff next. That's the next thing I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about the meeting with General Flynn and what that's all about. So good question. We'll get to it next. Ket King writes, Steve, did you hear about the new FBI director? I hear he's a pretty good pick by Trump. Yeah, so I did. I happened to be awake this morning before going to bed, and I saw that President Trump sent out that tweet announcing the new FBI director. And is it Christopher Wray? Is that his name? I'm having a little mind not working moment here. Christopher Wray, exactly. And so, and I don't know personally much about him, but I've heard some commentators say he's a very good choice and very qualified. So I'm going to be doing some research on him in the future. Let's see, other messages here. I just want to make sure I got to all your messages. Okay, I think I'm caught up there. Again, if you'd like to write in during the broadcast, give me a shout on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Okay, and wow, all right, this is breaking news. I just checked my email, and a half an hour ago, I see that North Korea launched several surface-to-ship ballistic missiles from its East Coast Thursday. So, okay, so that just happened. I'm just going to really briefly go to my Twitter feed and make sure I retweet that for people who are following. And maybe we'll be able to talk about this later. So much breaking news going on. I hadn't even noticed that. I've been preparing to come on here. So there was another, it looks like a North Korea missile test. Let me real quick. Just, we have, let me, while I'm on the air, but I'm going to interrupt this for 2 seconds and I'll show you this. So give me 1 second and I'll just show you what I'm doing here. Why keep you in the dark? So that's from Steve Herman. I'm retweeting that. He says multiple missiles fired today by North Korea. Strategic Sentinel says North Korea fired multiple unidentified projectiles assumed to be surface-to-ship missiles this morning from the vicinity of Wonsan. And they hadn't done a test last weekend, so they were kind of due for a test. I'll retweet that. Okay, so I'm just checking real quick to see if there's any other updates there. This is BNO News. North Korea appears to have test-fired multiple ground-to-ship missiles. Okay. All right, so we're going to go back to Comey coverage, but that happened. So we probably would have gone on the air anyway about that, but let's focus on Comey right now. I'll look up some more information about that later. Okay, so now we want to move on, and I believe I'm caught up with your messages here. Oh, there's one more message. Let me get to that real quick. Stephen Zhang writes in, once again, Trump was right and Comey confirmed what we supporters knew all along. I see a pattern here. Smiley face. That's from Stephen Zhang. Okay, now let's move on and talk about the what happened with General Flynn in that meeting there. And I had some specific thoughts on that. Hold on, let me get my notes out here. So give me 1 second, please. All this information, just trying to keep it organized here. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is President Trump had been there were leaks of Comey's testimony. There were leaks of Comey's notes that came out a few weeks ago, of Comey's notes that he had made about his meetings with President Trump and his conversation with President Trump. And a big thing that in the media reports was this report that President Trump had asked for loyalty from President Comey. A lot of people were freaking out about that. And I can understand why people might be concerned about that, about a president asking for loyalty, depending on how you take it. If you take the president asking for loyalty as like, you will literally do everything to make me look good and always do exactly what I say and don't be independent at all. Well, I don't think you'd want an FBI director to behave that way. But, what we didn't get with the leak is we didn't get the context, and I've said this frequently, and I said it again and again and again. When you get leaked information about what somebody said, you only get one part of the conversation. You don't get the context, and it's and you want to be careful about reading into it because you don't know in what context the remark was said, and how a remark looks on its own can look very different when you know what the conversation was like. And I think this could be a case of that, where not everyone, but a lot of people I saw in the mainstream media and on the left jumped all over this leak about he asked for loyalty and said said that really was a terrible thing for President Trump to do, and it shows that he didn't want an independent FBI, and he just wanted to assert his power over Comey, and there was no sense of well, wait, maybe we should know the context here in which this was asked. And this document we're looking at today, this one, oops, not that one, that's not it, this document here, this is giving us some context for the loyalty remark. And the context comes because this remark was made in this January 27th dinner. So this is what I'm going to talk about now, where it says January 27th dinner. This was the private dinner at the White House between James Comey and President Trump. So I want to talk about a little bit about what the context is here. Now, and I think when you look at the context of the actual dinner and what the conversation was like in the dinner, there's a plausible reading of that conversation on which President Trump's asking for loyalty doesn't look that bad, and certainly looks much more benign than a lot of the media and the experts in the media have been portraying it as. So let me explain here. So at the dinner, the first thing to notice here is at the dinner. So they start having dinner, okay? And basically, out of nowhere, I want to mention this. They start having dinner, and a key detail is basically out of nowhere, Comey makes this remark that he's not reliable in the way politicians use that word. So let me show you this. So they're having dinner. I'm going to show you they're talking about their dinner. Turned out to be just the two of us. You see where it says that, blah, blah, blah. President began, I'm skipping over some stuff. The president asked me whether I want to stay on as FBI director. I told him I did. I had told him that already. Okay, keep going. Said I love my work. And so what had happened is President Trump if you see above there, it says, my instincts told me that in the one-on-one setting, in the pretense that this was our first discussion about my position, meant the dinner was at least in part an effort to have me ask for my job and create some sort of patronage relationship. That's how Comey was taking it. But anyways, so basically, they sit down for dinner, and Trump said, one of the things Trump says is, hey, do you still want to keep your job? And Comey says yes. And then Comey says, here's where it says this. I replied that I loved my work and intended to stay and serve out my 10-year term as director. And then because the Senate made me uneasy, I added that I was not reliable in the way politicians use that word, but he could always count on me to tell the truth. Now, what I want to point out is when if you read through this document, that sort of comes out of the blue, and you can imagine President Trump sitting there, and all of a sudden James Comey says, now I'm not reliable in the traditional sense. Like, President Trump didn't ask Comey, are you reliable? He just asked him if he wanted to stay in his job. And then you hear Comey say, now I'm not reliable in the traditional sense. So that might have raised a bit of a red flag with President Trump, and I'll talk about that some more. And then, note here what happens right after, okay? So, you can see in the paragraph, this is right where, in this middle paragraph there, Comey says, I was not reliable in the way politicians use that word. Then it says in the next paragraph, a few moments later, so basically right after Comey had made this mark that I'm not reliable in the traditional sense that politicians say, then the president says, I need loyalty, I expect loyalty. That's when the president said it. And a reasonable interpretation of this remark by the president is that he was saying this in response to James Comey saying, well, I'm not reliable in the traditional way politicians use the word. Now, I'm not saying I know why President Trump said that. I'm not saying I know why any of these people said any of these things. All I am saying is that, to me, it's an entirely plausible interpretation of this conversation that when President Trump first said, I need loyalty, I expect loyalty, he was saying that because just right before that, James Comey kind of out of the blue said, well, I'm not reliable in the way politicians use the word. So it's possible that the loyalty remark that President said was a result of what came right before it. And I'm reminded of, when Jeff Sessions gave his testimony to Al Franken, and he said he hadn't met with anybody from the Russian government. If you looked at the way, on its own, it seemed, once you knew the facts about that he had met with, I think it was the ambassador, and you saw the testimony on its own, you might think Sessions lied. But if you actually went back and watched what was being talked about by Senator Franken right before Sessions answered, you saw that, I can see that maybe Sessions thought Al Franken was asking about not every single person I met with, but with certain cases. And Sessions' remarks to Franken, and I explained this in a video way back when it happened, seemed much less like raw, like evil or lying or whatever, when you actually put them in the context of the conversation and you saw what came right before. And I was pretty stunned when I read this document and I saw this, because all I'd heard was President Trump asked Comey for loyalty. But I had never heard anything about what came right before that in the conversation. And when I saw this, and I saw that right before this in the conversation, Comey had kind of out of the blue said, I'm not reliable in the traditional way politicians use the word. Well, then it at least makes some sense why President Trump might just say, oh, well, I need loyalty, I expect loyalty. Because out of the blue, Comey just said, I'm not reliable. So, again, I can't be sure why President Trump said this, but it seems that's at least to me a very plausible interpretation that President Trump said it as a response to something Comey said. He didn't just have the dinner. It seems to me like when you watch the coverage of this, like President Trump is portrayed by like this mafia boss who invites Comey to dinner to say, I need loyalty. And if you actually read the document, I think a plausible interpretation is that President Trump didn't intend to say this loyalty thing. It just came up because right before that, all of a sudden, out of the blue, James Comey says, I'm not reliable. So that's an important part of this testimony. Okay, let's keep going in this dinner. So the loyalty remark comes up one more time at the end of the dinner, and you can see this here as we go further in the document. Let's see. Near the end of our dinner, the president turned to the subject of my job. Hold on a second. Where does it say it? He then said, I need loyalty. I reply, you always get honesty from me. And he paused and then said, that's what I want, honest loyalty. So there were 2 times he asked about loyalty. The first time came right after James Comey said, I'm not reliable in the traditional sense of reliable that politicians use it as. But so I read this and I saw, okay, President Trump brought up loyalty at the end. But then I noticed after this, right in the document, look what comes after it. It says, during the dinner, the president returned to the salacious material I briefed him about January 6th. And as he had done previously, expressed his disgust for the allegations and strongly denied them. So remember, this is the second time at this dinner, Comey's meeting with Trump. The first time, Comey told Trump, hey, we came upon this material that we're not going to release to the public, but it alleges that you did something salacious. And President Trump was upset about that, and he said, I didn't do that, and he didn't want it to go public. You would think he didn't want this to go public. So he actually asked about this during the dinner. So note that during the dinner, President Trump is asking about this salacious material. Given that we know that, to me, it makes sense that President Trump would be concerned about James Comey and the FBI leaking this material. He was clearly very concerned about this salacious material, these salacious accusations about himself, President Trump, that were not made public yet and that could be embarrassing to him, which suggests to me maybe he was really worried that they would be leaked and made public. And if that was a concern, which seems to be suggested by the fact that he brought up this material in this dinner, well then, that gives another plausible reason why at the end of the dinner, after having brought up the salacious material again, President Trump would again say, as it says here, what does it say? I need loyalty. See where it says I need loyalty? So remember, so the first time President Trump asked for loyalty is right after right after James Comey says, well, I'm not reliable in the traditional way politicians use the word. And then the second time President Trump asks for loyalty and says, I need loyalty, is when he has brought up this concern he has about this material he knows that Comey has, this salacious material. So I don't see it as like completely unreasonable for President Trump to have said, I need loyalty. Can I get loyalty? I want loyalty from you. If his concern was that James Comey had this lewd material and he had just told him, I'm not reliable in the traditional sense, and President Trump is really trying to find out, can I trust this person? Can I trust that this person won't leak this really awful stuff about me? Then I could see him saying, I need loyalty. Now, I'm not saying I know for a fact that this is why President Trump made the loyalty remarks, but it certainly seems like a plausible interpretation given the facts about the conversation that Comey himself says. I'm just looking at what Comey's account of the conversation is, and I'm telling you, given all of that context, which we haven't heard before, and we're just hearing in this document, it would make sense that President Trump would ask for loyalty, and in doing so, he wouldn't be sort of being the mafia boss who says, I need loyalty for no reason at all. His asking for loyalty is prompted by Comey, one, saying the FBI has all this salacious material on Trump, which hasn't been released to the public yet, and which is unverified, and two, Comey saying, I'm not reliable in the traditional sense. So, and just to clarify, Music World says, in the chat room said, who said it was lewd? So this document says the material was of salacious nature, which suggests it has to do with some kind of, if you look up salacious, it's having to do with indecent sexual matters kind of things. That's Comey's words, that the material was salacious about President Trump, even though it was unverified. So just so you know, that's why I'm saying that. So anyways, this is another case. It's just, to me, it's similar to the case where, we talked about already that first case where this testimony was supposed to make President Trump look bad. One way it was supposed to make him look bad is that, well, it'll show that President Trump didn't really get told by James Comey 3 times that he's not under investigation. But as we see, the testimony actually confirms that President Trump was told 3 times by Comey that he was not under investigation. And also, I've heard people, saying like, oh, we're going to hear in this testimony about how President Trump asked for loyalty, and it's going to make Trump look really bad that he was asking Comey for loyalty. And to me, when you look at this testimony and you hear the details of the conversation, it suggests a much more benign interpretation than has been given previously in the media of why President Trump brought up the loyalty issue. So again, this testimony to me is making Trump look less bad than the media thought it would, rather than more bad. Okay, so that is that. I want to talk a little more about testimony, but I want to take a quick break and take your questions and comments if you have any. So let me check my Twitter here real quick. If you'd like to write in and give comments, you can reach me at @Lookner on Twitter, @LOOKNER, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Hello again to everybody on Facebook watching. In addition to YouTube, hello to you as well. Sorry, I'm just checking my messages here to make sure I've gotten to all of you. 1787 writes in, those experts will continue their expert commentary and opinions as long as there is a barking seal audience that will listen. #MAGA. That is from 1787. P-Cell wrote in, thanks RSBN and thanks Steve for breaking down the analysis of Comey's testimony instead of news bites. Your ability to grasp a topic within a short time is amazing. Thank you all at RSBN. Thank you, P-Cell. And it was not a short time. I spent all afternoon looking at this. So I was putting in some time reading it, which I think was necessary. But thank you, P-Cell. And before we move on, let me again say thank you to the moderators for moderating in the chat room. Much appreciated. If you're on YouTube and you're on Facebook, I might not see your chat comments. So if you want to reach me, the best thing to do is go to @Lookner on Twitter and message me at @Lookner on Twitter. That's the easiest way for me to see your messages and your questions and your comments. Okay, let's check one more thing. Oh, and I also wanted to say, let me repeat, we're viewer supported. We can't be on the air without you. You let us stay on the air and bring you this kind of coverage. So if you want to support RSBN, we really appreciate it. You can donate by going to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate, or you can donate in the chat room on YouTube. Click the $sign at the bottom of the chat room and you can donate that way. Any donation is welcome. It really helps us stay on the air. Without your donations, we could not be on the air doing this. All right. Let us move on. And there were a couple other things I wanted to mention here. Those are a couple of my big points. Oh, I had another kind of bigger point that I wanted to mention. If I can find it here. Give me 1 second, please. Let me go back. Oops. Let me go back to me. So hold on 1 sec as I find this, please. Oh, something else I thought was interesting was, there was speculation why President Trump fired Comey and why President Trump was upset with Comey. And there was something very interesting that I saw in the testimony. And also, something interesting about, some people have said, well, President Trump's firing Comey and President Trump's, I forgot the General Flynn thing too. There's a whole question about whether President Trump obstructed justice. So I want to get into that also too. That's this Flynn meeting where, so let me talk about that next. There's this General Flynn meeting and where, meeting. It's not the General Flynn meeting. It's a meeting where it was the day after General Flynn was fired. This is the meeting on, which meeting is this? Let me look. Let me get the date for you here. This is the February 14th Oval Office meeting. And in this is the meeting. This is the meeting where, at the end of the meeting, President Trump asked James Comey to stick around and asked everybody else to leave the office. And then at the end of the meeting, he said, "Hey, I hope you can find it. I hope you can let this go. Let this thing about General Flynn go. Let the let the investigation go." He seemed to be saying. And some people have speculated that was like President Trump. Some people have speculated that President Trump was trying to get the investigation of General Flynn stopped because he was trying to obstruct the Russia investigation in general. That's the narrative we've heard in the mainstream media, is that President Trump wanted Comey to stop investigating General Flynn because President Trump was worried about the larger Russia investigation and the investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia, and he wanted to stop that investigation. To me, this testimony here shows that narrative to be absolutely wrong, and I'll tell you why. But first, Chanel Regencia gave $10 and said, "Keep up the good work, RSBN. Happy birthday, Vice President Pence." So that's from Chanel Regencia. Thank you very much, Chanel. Really appreciate the donation. Very kind of you and generous. Thanks so much. And as I said before, we can only survive and stay on the air thanks to your donations, so we really appreciate it. So let's look at this February 14th Oval Office meeting. And again, at the end of the meeting, President Trump did, so I'll show you, right here it says, President closed the door, and you can see where it says here, the President returned to the topic of Mike Flynn, saying he's a good guy and has been through a lot. Here's the passage here, right in the middle there. I hope, he says, President Trump says to James Comey, reportedly, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go." So that's the part that we've heard in the media that was, that was leaked, that President Trump said something like that. And that's the part the mainstream media has jumped on, and people on the left have jumped on and said, and a number of people have said, that shows that President Trump was trying to get General Flynn off the hook because President Trump was trying to stifle the Russia investigation. But look, I want you to show you something that James Comey says in his testimony that suggests Comey himself doesn't think that's what President Trump was doing. Hold on, let me just find that for you. Find you a specific place. So again, here we have, this comes, see where it says immediately prepared. So hold on, let me just go over this again. So right here at this paragraph where it begins the president, that's where President Trump says reportedly to Comey, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go." Now look what happens later, though, shortly after that. What does Comey say? "I immediately prepared an unclassified memo of the conversation about Flynn and discussed the matter with FBI senior leadership. I had understood the president to be requesting that we drop any investigation of Flynn in connection with false statements about his conversations with the Russian ambassador in December." Here's the key statement. "I did not understand the president to be talking about the broader investigation into Russia or possible links to his campaign. I could be wrong, but I took him to be focusing on what had just happened with Flynn's departure and the controversy around his account of phone calls." So what Comey is saying here is he's saying he took President Trump in this meeting to be saying, Flynn's a good guy. I don't want to see Flynn get into too much trouble, so I hope you can find to let this Flynn investigation go. He's not trying to protect Flynn to obstruct any kind of larger investigation at all. Comey thinks President Trump is just expressing his hope that there won't be a Flynn investigation because he thinks Flynn's a good guy, or he doesn't want Flynn. It's all about Flynn. It's not about protecting Flynn to obstruct a larger investigation. Right here, Comey himself denies that's what he thinks President Trump was doing here. And that is the narrative we've seen so much in the mainstream media, that, President Trump said to Comey, don't let the Flynn thing go because President Trump was trying to protect himself. And Comey here explicitly says, I don't think that's what President Trump was doing. He was just focused on Flynn. Look at his words again. I had understood the president to be requesting that we drop any investigation of Flynn, blah, blah, blah. I did not understand the president to be talking about the broader investigation into Russia or possible links to the campaign. I could be wrong, but I took him to be focusing on what had just happened with Flynn's departure and the controversy around Flynn's account of his phone calls. That's what President Trump was focusing on. And further confirmation of this claim, way of looking at it, comes when at the beginning once everybody else leaves and Comey's in the office alone with Trump, what does Trump say? I want to talk about Mike Flynn. And he says, the president began by saying Flynn hadn't done anything wrong, but he had to let him go because he had misled the president. And then also look further down here, President returned to the topic of Mike Flynn saying he's a good guy and has been through a lot. So really, James Comey's take of this meeting is that President Trump expressed his hope that the FBI would drop the Flynn investigation. Now, Comey thinks that it was inappropriate. That's a whole other discussion we can have. But the point I'm making here is that Comey did not think President Trump was asking the FBI to drop the investigation on Flynn because Trump was trying to protect himself. He took President Trump, as just bringing up the Flynn investigation in itself, and not trying to stop the Flynn investigation because it would lead to trouble for President Trump himself and more investigation of President Trump. Now, as to whether this was obstruction of justice, I personally think, legally, if you look at what President Trump actually said, regardless of what he meant, look, maybe President Trump was trying to put pressure on General Flynn, on Comey to drop the Flynn investigation. But look what happened here. He says the language President Trump uses specifically is, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go. So he basically just says, I hope you can do this. And it seems to me that in court, if this ever went to court, President Trump could just say, well, I didn't ask him to drop the investigation. I just said what my hope is. Now, I'm sure Comey could say, well, when you say I hope and you're the president, that's more like a request. But to me, it's a difficult thing to conclusively show that President Trump here was requesting that James Comey drop the investigation rather than just expressing his hope. Because the words that Comey himself quotes none of the words say. At no time is President Trump in Comey's testimony saying to Comey, could you please drop this investigation? He just says, I hope this happens. I hope you can let this drop. So I think that suggests it will be a tough time legally in proving some kind of obstruction of justice. Now, also, aside from the legal question about what could be shown in court, there's this question, even if it can't legally be shown there was obstruction of justice, if it was bad enough, in theory, the House could impeach President Trump for this because they could say, well, while legally he wasn't obstructing justice, we think that's actually what he was doing. I don't know. When I look at what the actual statements are here, and especially when you see here, it wasn't like, well, that Comey said that President Trump he didn't think President Trump was trying to protect himself by asking about General Flynn. And given that the House is controlled by Republicans, I have a hard time seeing them ever impeaching President Trump on the basis of this testimony about this particular meeting. I have a hard time buying that. So those are my thoughts on that meeting. Okay, I think there's one more additional aspect of this testimony I want to talk about before we end the stream. But I want to get to your messages first. This is Steve Lookner. We've been talking about the James Comey testimony that's going to be given tomorrow. And we've seen a number of ways in which there was mainstream media narrative about how bad this testimony was going to be for President Trump. And we've seen a number of ways in which you actually look at the actual testimony. It doesn't seem, the mainstream media hopes a lot of them, or at least predictions a lot of this testimony, doesn't seem to be borne out in the actual testimony. And the actual testimony seems much less bad for President Trump in numerous ways than a lot of people in the media were saying it was going to be. Now, let me say this, though. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you hear Democrats trying to make tomorrow trying to make this testimony look bad for President Trump. But when they do that, I would advise you to look at the actual testimony itself and don't take people's word for what the testimony says. Really look at the testimony and read it yourself and see if what they're saying about the testimony is actually accurate. Andrew Sova, you sent me a message about a Sadiq Khan related thing. Since that's a little off topic, I'm not going to read it here. I'll read your message later, Andrew. Thanks for sending that in. Fern Marie says, excellent point. It's all in the tone of hope. Very good, and I had not thought of that. Thanks again. So you're talking about the point I was saying. Legally, it might be tough to approve obstruction of justice because President Trump never requested Comey drop the investigation into General Flynn. He just said what he hoped Comey could let it go. If you'd like to write in again, you can reach me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter at Lookner because I cover a lot of breaking news stuff and have been posting about the Comey stuff and also about other breaking news stories. So if you like breaking news, feel free to follow me on Twitter. Also, feel free to follow Right Side Broadcasting on Twitter at RSB Network. Let's see. Just looking for some more comments here, making sure I've gotten to all of your comments and questions. Okay, I think I'm caught up there. Oh, we got an email here. Andrew McDonald writes in, Steve, Comey didn't vindicate Trump. Fox News and Trump and his supporters are twisting Comey's words. Comey said no. You're not under investigation personally at this time, but will not say that in public because it may not be correct down the road. Also, it was a counterintelligence at that time, not a criminal investigation or other investigation going on like now when Trump asked Comey. Comey also didn't say his staff was being investigated or will be, and that it may be connected to Trump later. Trump has ties to Russia mafia through his business, which mafia is connected to Putin. Trump broke the law by asking Comey to back off Flynn investigation. The Republicans won't do anything, nor Paul Ryan, because they're putting party over country. Comey made stink in procedures, but I trust him over Trump, who keeps lying over and over. That's from Andrew McDonald. So Andrew, just to clarify, I did not say that James Comey's testimony completely vindicates President Trump from any wrongdoing that might have occurred during his administration. What I was trying to, and I think I've been clear about this, what I've been saying is Comey's testimony, I think, shows that certain claims about President Trump that the media has been making and that other people on the left have been making aren't actually supported by his testimony. For example, the claim, there were people I've seen who disputed, who said, when James Comey's testimony comes out, it's going to show that President Trump was wrong to say that Comey had told him 3 times that he wasn't under investigation. And I clearly said in my reporting on this was that the investigation Comey was talking about was counterintelligence investigation. Now, Comey's testimony, I guess, leaves it open that there could have been a criminal investigation of President Trump ongoing at the time, but we've heard nothing about this ongoing at the time from anyone, so I don't see a reason to think there was such an investigation. And certainly, if Robert Mueller could investigate the meeting with General Flynn and investigate that as possible obstruction of justice, but I never said in my reporting here today that this testimony shows there was no obstruction of justice. What I said is that this testimony, I showed how this testimony might be hard to prove that there legally was obstruction of justice. So I don't think I'm making the claims that you're saying I'm making, Andrew, but I do appreciate you writing in. Okay, let's move on. We're close to wrapping up this stream here, but I have a little more I want to talk about. And also, let me say again, thank you to the moderators for all your excellent job moderating today. Let's see. I saw, who did I see in there? You know, it's interesting. Actually, I'm looking at the chat. I wonder if do we have some people doing like moderator duty who aren't technically moderators? because I'm looking at the chat. Moderators are working their tails off lately, but I don't see any mods in the chat at the moment. So maybe what we do have a lot of longtime viewers in the chat at the moment on YouTube. So maybe those people are enforcing our chat rules, which I would not be surprised at. So whoever is doing the enforcing in there at this point now, whether it be moderators or other people, I appreciate that going on. And also hello to everybody on Facebook. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. Let me take a quick peek over at Facebook here. So hello to everybody out there. And let me just say, again, we are viewer supported. So if you do enjoy our coverage, and JC is there. JC says, thank you, Steve. So JC is definitely on there moderating right now. And also the moderators on the RSBN.TV, thank you as well. So if you do enjoy our coverage, please consider donating, because you guys make it possible for us to stay on the air. We don't have a lot of money. We're a very small organization. I have a secret for you. I am in my apartment right now. I'm not in a big news studio. So we really do this with a minimum of expense and try to make it as good for you as we can. But all of your contributions are what allow us to stay on the air. So if you'd like to contribute, we really appreciate it. You can go to rsbn.tv/donate. That's rsbn.tv/donate. Or you can click on the dollar sign in the YouTube chat room. Click on that dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat room. You can donate that way. Or you can go to our Patreon page and set up a monthly donation and get cool free stuff from us in return. That is www.patreon.com/rsbn. Oh, and I've also forgot to ask, if you're on Facebook and you're watching this, we love when you share our videos, because that really helps us get the word out about Right Side Broadcasting. We don't have money to widely advertise Right Side Broadcasting, so you sharing our videos on Facebook really helps us, and you liking our videos on YouTube helps us, because when you like our videos on YouTube, that tells YouTube, hey, people like this, and then YouTube will suggest it to more viewers. So please like our videos if you do like them on YouTube. Okay, by the way, we have a comment here from Deplorable James B. Deplorable James B says, okay, Comey says Trump on face value asks to go light on Flynn. He didn't even ask to go light on Flynn. He just said he hopes that, this is my editorializing. Just to be clear, just to be clear, he didn't ask Comey to go light on Flynn. He said he hopes Comey will go light on Flynn. But anyways, Deplorable James B, Comey says Trump on face value asked to go light on Flynn. But it seems to me like he has no fear of not reporting this to his boss. So Deplorable James raises an interesting point, which is that Comey did not report this incident to his boss, Jeff Sessions, at the time, or anybody else at the Justice Department. And his reason, I won't really get into it right now, but he talks about in this document, in his testimony, why he didn't do that. And I found the reasoning kind of odd. I'll just show you where it is. Where was it here? Okay, so the FBI leadership team agreed with me that it was important not to infect the investigative team at the Justice Department with the president's request, which, now note how Comey says the president made a request. So Comey interprets the president as requesting him that he doesn't, that he lets the Flynn thing go. But the president's language was, he strictly speaking, the president said, I hope you can do this. Now, but I could see, look, one person could interpret that as not being a request, another person could interpret it as being a request. Anyways, look, here it says, we also concluded that given that it was a one-on-one conversation, there was nothing available to corroborate my account. So he here is explaining why he didn't report it to anybody at the Justice Department. He's saying he didn't want to infect the investigation. Given that it was one-on-one, there was nothing to corroborate my account. It made little sense, he says, to report it to Attorney General Sessions, who we expected would likely recuse himself from the involvement in the Russia-related investigations. And then he says, the Deputy Attorney General's role was then filled in an acting capacity by the United States Attorney, who would also not be long in the role. So after discussing the matter, we decided it would keep it very closely held. So basically, there's like a number of different reasons given here why they didn't tell anybody at the Justice Department about this conversation. And I don't know, it's, to me, there should be, I would think there is some procedure to be followed, and it should be a cut and dried claim. It should be a clear procedure matter whether you go to the deputy Department of Justice and the Attorney General in a case like this and tell them about this. And no clear procedure is being followed here. It's like he's saying things like, well, we could tell the Attorney General, but he was probably going to recuse himself. And we could tell the Deputy Attorney General, but he probably wasn't going to be around. That's not following clear procedure. That's basing whether you tell the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General on your predictions about how long they're going to be working on this investigation before recusing themselves or before being replaced. And I... Either there should be a clear procedure that that Comey was not following here, or there's no clear procedure and there should be. So I found this section where Comey says why he didn't tell anybody at the Justice Department about this conversation a bit problematic. But I could talk about that in much more detail, but I'm going to leave that aside for now. If you want to look at it more, you can see where it is. It's at the end of the February 14th part of the testimony. Okay, I think there was one more thing I wanted to mention here. Let me just see if I can find it here real quick. One more thing I wanted to go over. Just peeking over here through my earlier, I had tweeted out something and I want to remind myself about it. Oh, okay, I remember here. So the last thing I want to talk about was something I found interesting toward the end, and an interesting thing here about what President Trump was upset about. So, another piece of narrative we've gotten from many in the mainstream media and on the left is that President Trump wanted Comey to, we've seen things that say President Trump asked this person or asked this person to reveal that there was no investigation of him. And, there were leaks out, and they haven't been confirmed, that maybe President Trump asked like somebody at the Justice Department or somebody in the intelligence community, to say publicly, hey, President Trump isn't under investigation. And, I think an impression I've gotten was when they say that, President Trump is just trying to clear his good name, or President Trump is trying to obstruct the Russia investigation by doing that. But the impression I get from looking at this testimony, from reading Comey's own testimony, is that President Trump was very upset that the FBI in private had told him 3 different times, Comey had told him 3 different times, you're not under investigation by us. And yet, there was still rumor the FBI wouldn't make that public, and the reason why President Trump was upset about this is it was making it very hard for him to do his job and help America. Twice in conversations with Comey, which are documented in this document, President Trump says in private to Comey, not for public consumption, in private to Comey. So President Trump had no reason to think this conversation would be released to the public. He says in private to Comey, basically, hey, with you guys not coming out and saying I'm not under investigation, that means a lot of people still do think I might be under investigation, and it's making it really hard for me to do my job and help America. He says that repeated times. And so he's basically saying, hey, can you just tell the public that I'm not under investigation so it'll help me do my job and help America? Look, I'll show you where he says this. Let me show you. So the first time he says this is the 2 phone calls, March 30th and the one after that. March 30th. So look here, it says, he finished by stressing the cloud that was interfering with his ability to make deals for the country, and said he hoped I could find a way to get out that he wasn't being investigated. That is so clear. Look at what President Trump is doing there. This is a private conversation. This is not something President Trump would have said to Comey because he knew this public would see this. This is a private conversation. In the private conversation, what is the president saying? He's saying, I hope you can find a way to get out this information. I'm not being investigated. Why? Not because it's making me look bad personally, but because it's interfering with my ability to make deals for the country. President Trump in this private conversation is concerned with the country, not himself, with the country. And he's saying, look, you're not telling the public I'm not under investigation, and that's hurting the country. And now look what he says, April 11th phone calls. April 11th phone call. On the morning of April 11th, the president called me and asked what I had done about his request that I get out that he is not personally under investigation. So President Trump still is very concerned that he's not under the investigation, but the FBI won't release this information. And again, what does President Trump say? He replied that the cloud was getting in the way of his ability to do his job. So President Trump, in two private conversations with James Comey, says, look, Comey, you've told me I'm not under investigation repeatedly. Can't you tell this to the public? Because you're not telling it to the public is hurting my ability to do my job and make deals for the country. So again, this to me really goes against the narrative we've seen by many in the mainstream media on the left that President Trump was concerned about his own reputation. President Trump's chief concern in his dealings with Comey was to prevent there from being a wider investigation. Here, these two phone calls are about, on the April 11th one and the April 30th one. Look, they're both about, what are they about? They are about President Trump saying, hey, can you release this information that I'm not under investigation so I can do a better job for the country? Look at how March 30th phone call. On the morning of March 30th, President called me the FBI. He described Russia's investigation as a cloud that was impairing his ability to act on behalf of the country. That's what the phone call's about. April 11th phone call. President called me and asked what I had done about his request that I get out that he is not personally under investigation. Why? Because the cloud is getting in the way of his ability to do his job. So, and these are the last two conversations President Trump had with James Comey before he fired him about a month later. So, to me, a very plausible interpretation of President Trump's frustration with James Comey is that ended up with him being fired is that at least part of that frustration is that the FBI had told President Trump, James Comey in their first several meetings had told President Trump 3 different times, you're not under investigation by the FBI. But he wouldn't make that public. And President Trump, I think, might have been especially annoyed that James Comey went in front of Congress and said publicly, there is an investigation into the Trump campaign. Remember when he did that? He did that. And President Trump reportedly was upset about this. And I think somewhere in this testimony, it does say President Trump was upset about this. I'm not going to go back and look at it, but I do recall seeing it somewhere. And you can imagine President Trump being upset, which is like, President Trump is thinking, look, James Comey told me I personally wasn't investigated, but he won't release that to the public, but he's willing to go in front of Congress and say, well, the Trump campaign is being investigated. So you can see President Trump you could see him being frustrated that Comey has told President Trump repeatedly he's not being investigated, but he won't release this information to the public, while he will tell the public that the Trump campaign is being investigated. And President Trump feels, he has said repeatedly to Comey, this is keeping me from doing my job and helping the country, from doing my job, from making deals for the country and helping the country. And a plausible interpretation of all that information is President Trump thought that James Comey was getting in the way of him doing a good job for the people of America. Now, you might disagree with that assessment, but what I'm saying is that this testimony of James Comey that we've just gone over, especially this part about the phone calls, you can a plausible interpretation of President Trump's firing of James Comey is that in part, he was frustrated, at least in part, he was frustrated because he thought James Comey by not going public with the information that President Trump was under investigation was hurting his ability to do his job. And that narrative about why President Trump fired Comey is very, very different than the narrative we see so much in the mainstream media and on the left, that President Trump fired Comey because he was worried about protecting President Trump from investigation. That does not appear in this document, that narrative. What does appear in this document is somebody who's very frustrated with the FBI director because he won't publicly say what he said in private, which is that President Trump is not under investigation, and that this is, in President Trump's view, getting in the way of him doing a good job as president. So basically, a general theme here from my looking at the actual words Comey says is that if you look at the actual words Comey says, the narrative you get presented to you about President Trump's interaction with Comey is very, very different than the narrative you've been given by many in the media and on the left about what these leaks about Comey's testimony implied about President Trump. And it's very angering. I'm angry about that. I'd be just as angry if the president was a Democrat and the same thing happened. Because you've had media, mainstream media, many in it, really affecting how Americans think on this by repeating the same things over and over again. And then I look at the actual testimony and I see what they're saying in the media about what Comey's experience with President Trump implies isn't actually borne out in the actual testimony. And also, a lot of Americans aren't going to have the time to read the actual testimony. And they're busy, they have jobs, they have kids, and so I'm sure tomorrow you'll hear some Democrats coming on in some commentators in the mainstream media, and once again saying things about President Trump, negative things that aren't justified by this testimony, and that might actually be contradicted, or at least, if not contradicted, there might be evidence against those claims in this testimony. So I would encourage you to read the testimony for yourself, and I did, and I found it made me very frustrated with the coverage of the President Trump and Comey interactions over the last few weeks. And I am not saying that President Trump did anything wrong. I certainly think, for example, I think there could be a plausible case to be made that President Trump acted unreasonably. If you think the FBI's office should be independent from the president, then you might have a problem with President Trump saying to James Comey, I hope General Flynn, the General Flynn thing, you can find a way to let that go. Now, maybe that was made innocuously, but even if President Trump made that claim, even if President Trump said that with no sinister intentions, you could see, I think, how James Comey might have interpreted it differently. So my point is, I'm not saying here that there's nothing here that suggests President Trump, that this completely vindicates President Trump from all possible accusations one could make. What I am saying is that if you read this testimony, it seems much less bad and much more benign for President Trump than we've been led to believe over the last few weeks. And in some ways, to me, it does vindicate President Trump from certain accusations. And I feel like, and these are the ones we've been talking about so far. Okay, so that is the presentation. I want to make the analysis of Comey's testimony. Before, I want to just quickly see if you have if there are any comments I missed. Drew says, even if what you say is true, it doesn't give President Trump permission to speed up the investigation. Trump is not above the law. So I have not said during this broadcast anything about Trump speeding up the investigation. I have not made any such claims at all. I haven't even talked about that, Drew. So I just want to make that clear that I haven't spoken about that at all. And also, I have not suggested in any way that Trump isn't above the law. What I said is, I don't think anybody should be above the law. What I said about the obstruction of justice legal charges, I said legally it might be hard to prove that given what's in this testimony. Okay, I think I'm caught up there. Okay, I believe I am caught up with all of your messages here. So we're going to wrap this up in a second. And I also want to mention, so we will be carrying the testimony tomorrow, the Comey testimony. we're planning on going on very early, at least like an hour before the testimony for our pre-show. I will be on for the pre-show for that. So you can join us for that. I think we're going on probably around 7:45 or 8 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. The testimony is at, actually, no, 8, not around 9 Eastern, 8:45 Eastern, because the testimony is at 10 Eastern. Also, we are planning on covering the British election tomorrow. I'll be covering that as well, starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully I can, I'll try to find some time tonight to do some more research on that and get some sleep for tomorrow. It'll be a busy day. So looking forward to bringing that to you. So be sure to watch our coverage tomorrow. If you haven't watched it, also Nick Fuentes was on today, America First with Nick Fuentes. So you might want to check that out on Right Side. Want to say a special thank you to the moderators for moderating this chat room today during this presentation, during this analysis. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Right Side Broadcasting. If you want to know about the latest videos and plans we have for covering stuff, follow us at RSB Network. And follow me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, especially if you're interested in breaking news, because I cover a lot of it on my Twitter feed. Please subscribe to us on YouTube also, and click the notifications bell when you subscribe to get updated about all our videos. We would appreciate that. So I want to thank you to the moderators who moderated the chat, and all of you for watching, everybody watching on Facebook, everybody watching on YouTube. Thank you to all our regulars out there. I've seen a bunch of them. Thank you, Bonnie Nutter, for the kind words. I've seen Jason Thornton is there watching in the chat room, and some other people. Music World is there. Thank you, Music World, for saying thanks. And what else did I have to say to you? I'll say some quick goodbyes to people in the chat room. Let's see here. Hold on, give me 1 second. The chat's on a bit of a delay. Thank you also for everybody who wrote in. Appreciate your feedback today. No matter what you wrote in, I like to hear feedback from different people, so thank you. Okay, so I think we're going to end this stream now. Again, thank you so much for watching. Please join us tomorrow when we cover both the Comey testimony with a pre-show and a post-show and the British election. JC, thank you as well for doing moderating. Appreciate it. Thank you, one of We the People. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your kind words. Thanks, Jean Arthur. Thanks, Music World. Thank you, N2M. Want to give a shout out to some of the people on Facebook as well, if I can figure out how. Let's see. I can never figure out how to, let's see, if I do that, will that do it? That's dangerous. Oops. Nope. Get the whole Facebook chat up. I have to figure that out. I can get like a few Facebook comments up. Anyways, thank you, P-Cells. Thanks, Son of Earth and Sky. Appreciate it. And the people watching, I could see some people on the YouTube page. So like Kat and Derek and Olin and Michael. I see those people. So thank you for watching. I can never get the comments. How can I see them live? How do I do it? All right, I got to get on that. I thought I knew last time, and I think I forgot. I think Jake might have told me, and I forgot how to see all the comments. Let's see here. Thank you, P-Cell. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Okay, we're going to wrap this up right now. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll go back to me. And have a great night. Hope you have a good night tonight. If there's any breaking news, as you know, we will come on and we will report it for you. And this is Steve Lookner on behalf of Right Side Broadcasting. Thanks for watching. Hope you join us for all of our coverage tomorrow. And hope you have a great night. We will see you very soon.